Welcome to the Disruptive podcast by Minority Innovation Weekend. Minority Innovation Weekend is a weekend summit dedicated to aiding innovators of color launch tech-focused startups, exploring emerging technologies and showcasing tech startups that have a founder or co-founder of color. During each episode, we will discuss innovation, tech startups, and more. Minority Innovation Weekend. One weekend, endless opportunities. Please visit www.minorityinnovationweekend.org to find out how to connect with us and to register for upcoming events.
Hey, welcome to the Minority Innovation Weekend Disruptive podcast. Today, you're with Sir Walter and Jayla, and we have our guests from TEDCO, Troy Lamel Stovall. How are you, Troy?
I'm doing blessed. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys.
That's awesome. So Troy, you are the CEO of TEDCO. Can we talk a little bit about how you got into this role, but the things that led up to it beforehand?
Yeah, I'll try to make that brief.
Take your time.
I've had a blessed journey. I'm an engineer by training, have degrees in engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, and have an MBA. Have been blessed to be able to work at places, I have to always say, like that used to, because some of them don't longer exist, like Southwestern Bell and old Bell Labs and Rockwell International. Worked at McKinsey, started a family, and this I got into venture capital, started a family investment office with the guy who started this old, YouTube probably had never heard of, it's called SkyTel. It's an old paging company, and a high net worth guy. And I still advise his family investment office, and do that, and got into venture capital from that. And then actually through a number of kind of interesting routes, got into higher ed. I have served as the chief operating officer, chief financial officer at 3 HBCUs, that being Jackson State, Howard University, and the University of the District of Columbia. And I've also had the opportunity to act as advisor to a number of other HBCUs and other fairly large institutions in the country. Jayla, while I was serving as the COO at the University of the District of Columbia, UDC, I literally got a phone call. I wasn't looking. I've served with the president there, a guy named Ronald Mason, for the last 20 years. He and I have been at, and I didn't mention Southern. I did a kind of a consulting stint at Southern when Ron was there. Ron and I have been at 3 institutions together, Jackson State, Southern, and UDC. And we were literally in the process of trying to figure out how we're going to reopen because of COVID. This was in 2020. And I got a call from some headhunters, told me about this thing called TEDCO, which I had heard of, and piqued my interest because what it is, Walter, is this. TEDCO is an interesting, you didn't ask this, but I think it's the interesting follow on, it's a great combination for me in my career because I interface with universities. We interface with obviously entrepreneurs. We clearly are a venture capital entity. And so and a lot of the technologies, and I love being close to the technologies. So it's this great combination of everything that I've done in my career, everything from consulting to economic impact, to working with the universities and working with the young folks. So it's just, I've actually, September the 7th will be my 1-year anniversary. So I'm still playing my rookie card, while I can.
That's interesting. I'm more familiar with the student services side of higher ed. I guess, what's the business side of higher ed like?
Well, so I tell people, at the end of the day, higher ed is a business. I mean, because we have customers that we serve, that being the students, but we also serve the communities that those institutions are in. We have all the other elements. We have HR and IT. We hire people, we fire people, we pay them. We have millions, in some cases, billions of dollars of facilities and land that have to be managed. We're trying to do construction. We're trying to grow. We have this thing called the academy that has to be invested in. And so there is a business side to hire. I think people, to your point, don't see, and students don't see. They only see it when there's a problem with the bill. That's the point. They see that part, obviously. But there's more to it than that. And so my job, as Eli says, is to make sure that all the other parts of the institution work seamlessly for the benefit of the students and the faculty and the alum.
You know, as a minority, you mentioned that you worked at a lot of HBCUs. Just can you talk a little about how important it is to, make sure that minorities are getting invested in and minorities are getting that education, that knowledge that they need to keep going?
Yeah, so going back to your original question, I'm an electrical engineer by training, as I said a few moments ago. And so I came up through an organization called the National Society of Black Engineers, or NSBE. All my friends are NSBE. My wife is from NSBE. She's an engineer too, all my friends. And so NSBE is in my blood. And I bring that up to answer your question because that's the heart of NSBE. The heart of NSBE is to introduce to these people of color, particularly Black folks, the opportunities in science and technology and engineering and math, or STEM as it's now called. And so I've been, Jalen, in the last 30 plus years in this space of how to not just introduce folks to technology, but to show them that someone like myself is a good example, and my wife as well, that what's great about being in this space and being an engineer by training is I'm taught to be a problem solver. And guess what? There's not a business on this planet that's not looking for somebody to help them solve a problem. And what you find in engineering is that engineers, the undergraduates, are in more non-engineering fields than any other undergraduate space, because like I said, we're taught to be problem solvers. And so for your listeners that are thinking about either coming into STEM or already in STEM, clearly I would love for more and more folks to stay in the science and tech space, but you're taught to be a problem solver. And so use those skills. You're not afraid of math. You're not afraid of problem solving. You're not afraid of the unknown, and you have the ability to solve a problem and think through the problem solving, the Socratic method of problem solving. So I would encourage folks. So there's an energy to that, and I think we got to get people more excited and take away the stigma of the nerd. My wife still calls me a nerd. We've been married 25 years. She still calls me a nerd, and so that's all good. But it's not about being a nerd. It's about being someone who can be excited and use that talent to be an entrepreneur. And by the way, being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to start something on your own. You could start something within a company that you might be employed at. And so people have this concept that you can only be an entrepreneur if you go start something outside of, on your own. That's absolutely not true. The whole point is being innovative. And I think we put those two words together. You can be innovative and not necessarily being an entrepreneur. And so being innovative is about thinking conceptually and thinking something that someone hasn't thought of before, or applying a new method to an old one. And so that's, again, what technology, what being an engineer has taught me how to do. And it's not just about being it, but it's also about your career. How do you have a career path that's innovative and is willing to take on risk and being able to do things and stretch yourself and learn along the way?
TEDCO works with founders and entrepreneurs here located in Maryland. What's some of the surprising areas that TEDCOs had the opportunity to invest in, I guess, technologies or companies?
Well, let me first, before I answer your question, let me make sure your listeners know a little real quick on TEDCO, because I think most people know, like you just said, the funding side of TEDCO. And
Right.
Let me start with that. So, and we have a number of funding vehicles, as I like to call them. We have funding vehicles at one end that looks at how do we help entrepreneurs at our institutions of higher learning. We have five research one institutions in Maryland. Those being Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Baltimore, University of Maryland Baltimore County, and their president just recently, Freeman Habrowski, very well-known young man, just announced his retirement. And then we have one HBCU, Morgan State University, is also in this group. And we help those five institutions take that research, Walter, and figure out how to translate it and de-risk it to opportunities in the commercial space. And we do grants and investments in those. We also do grants looking at what's called stem cell research. We have the ability to look at, again, research as well as clinical opportunities, and trying to figure out how to turn some of those things into real solutions that actually fight diseases or do things to address certain disease elements. And then along that continuum, we have pre-seed, seed, and Series A/B funds. And for folks that don't know all those terms, pre-seed is normally for those folks who are still coming up with their idea and haven't quite figured all of it out. Seed is, again, you kind of figured it out and maybe we even launched a little bit. And then Series A, B is for those who have launched and are looking to really scale and get a larger round. So we do all that funding across it, and we are technology agnostic. Now, because we're in Maryland, we do tend to get a lot of cyber and life sciences, but we have all kinds of really cool stuff that we're doing across a bunch of spaces like robotics, artificial intelligence, the ability to apply technology into some really areas. We have this one young man, happened to be a Black young man, is using technology to rethink how bathroom and kitchen remodeling takes place. And we funded that significantly. And it's a Black young man actually in Prince George's County. So we're very excited about that kind of stuff. But the other side of TEDCO is that, Jayla, you can't grow a company if it's not just about the money. You need access to incubators. You need access to accelerators. You need access to talent like computer scientists. You need access to lawyers. You need access to someday 3D printing or some type of prototyping or device manufacturing. So all those things, some of which we have within TEDCO, some of which we know within the ecosystem here in Maryland, we have access to all those things. And so we're this great marriage, Walter, of the funding and the support, or as I like to call it, the funding and the foundations. And so it's putting those two things together that makes TEDCO. And so, yes, we've been able to invest in some, so like I said, just some really cool stuff, some therapeutics. There's another, happened to be another Black young man that's looking at a potential to address a disease that affects a lot of folks in the South and a lot of folks in countries around kind of a foot disease around because of a spoiled soil. And so we got some really, really cool stuff that we're doing. And what I get most excited about, is not just these really cool stuff that we're getting from the research institution, which is really cool stuff, but when we also look at stuff that's doing that, Jayla, and also makes an impact. And that's a lot of what we do is how do we not just do an investment for the returns, but how do we drive a different state of the economy and a different state for innovation here in Maryland? And that's where I really get excited.
So what do you look for in people that you guys invest in? What are some of the key qualities that people need to have to get that funding? So
when I first started doing venture capital for this high net worth guy that I told you about, again, I ran a firm called Gulf South Capital and started as a family office. We were invested in a number of venture capital firms, particularly the big ones out in Silicon Valley. So I got a chance to go visit literally some of the most important people there in Silicon Valley, and they kind of took me under their wing, and they taught me the answer to your question. And the answer to your question is, they told me very clearly, Troy, you always, always, always invest in A quality people who have a B quality plan, and never the reverse. Never B quality people with an A quality plan. Point being, to answer your question more directly, we look for people who are coachable, clearly who have a good idea that's addressing a market question and a market need, and there's some scale that's potential with that. And so we can help them figure out that part of it, Jayla. But if you aren't coachable, if you aren't willing to take feedback, and if you think your idea is the best thing since sliced bread and you ain't listening to nobody, that's cool, but you won't get our money. And you probably won't get most people's money.
Makes sense.
Earlier you mentioned a consortium of institutions that TEDCO kind of supports. One of them being a HBCU. Do you support any other HBCUs outside of this consortium? Absolutely.
So in Maryland, there are 4 HBCUs. I already mentioned Morgan State. There's the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. There's Bowie State, and I'm literally not even 10 minutes from Bowie State where we live at. And then there's Coppin State University. And yes, we have a number of efforts with all 4 of them individually and collectively. And I do actually want to call out the one collective effort, actually, because I just spent some time with them, all 4 of them, over this last month. So we've been launching, Jayla, a women's entrepreneur effort, because we recognize that women entrepreneurs, one, don't get funding, obviously, just like Black folks don't get funding, but women lack the support network, and sometimes both the support network within themselves and then some tools that they need, because they've not had that network of individuals around them. And so Actually, my predecessor here at TEDCO, General Linda Singh, who was the commander of the Maryland National Guard, and again, my predecessor here, she's with a number of folks developed a women's entrepreneur program that our board passed, and we're actually in the process of piloting that in a couple of counties here in Maryland. But what I want to spend a minute on is, we said, as Linda and I started thinking about it, we got these 4 HBCUs here, Walter. Wouldn't it be kind of cool? And again, I told you I came from some unit. Wouldn't it be cool to create kind of a center or institute? Because I know universities like that kind of thing. A center or an institute for Black women entrepreneurs. And so we talked to the 4 presidents. We got them on a phone call a couple of months ago, and we're going down this path of looking at creating a center for Black women entrepreneurship, lifting lead, or Be Well, as we call it. And each of them are contributing, elements of what they do, both from entrepreneurs as well as elements that they bring to the table. So it's going to be really exciting. And as both of you are probably aware, you asked me, Jayla, if there was anything off limits, so I hope I'm saying y'all gonna cut out. But I just think right now we're in a space in this world where there's a lot of what I call white guilt money out there. There's everybody's trying to find their next thing to make sure they're doing their DEI thing. And every time I look up, somebody's being hired to do something DEI. And so there's a ton of money to support Black women entrepreneurs. And so we're going to go after that through this. And because we think we got something really unique of where you got this entity, Walter, with TEDCO working with these 4 HBCUs are working on something outside of, football and basketball. And so we're going to do something that's really going to drive a difference for Black women in Maryland. So I'm really, really excited, and hope in a few months we're going to be able to announce the launch of that and the funding of that through some of these efforts that we're going to try to go after.
And that sounds really awesome. Is that something that you think that one day you'll want to expand outside of Maryland to, other HBCUs around the country? I'm
hoping to your point, Jayla, I hope we are a pilot. And I hope that I'd have no problems going to my old friends in Mississippi. I grew up in Texas, going down to Texas and Georgia, where there's a ton of HBCUs. Alabama has just an amazing number of HBCUs. So yes, I would love to see this replicated across the country. Absolutely.
Awesome. And I know we were talking about investing in founders that are, really focused on tech. Are there any other founders that pop out to you that you've invested in that, are outside of the tech industry?
Well, I'll answer your question maybe a little different than maybe where you may be going. So one of the, our normal history of investing, because we're so close to these institutions of higher learning, had been that traditionally that technology, the definition of technology, had to be something that was IPable, had to be that intellectual property base, had to be something that, really had some defensibility to it. But as you think about it for a second, the notion of technology enablement, and again, this ain't just putting up a website and taking square, that ain't being technology enabled. But if you really do technology enablement for a service or retail business, and you can do it in a way that either does one of 3 things: scales you differently, allows you to scale differently, allows you to defend yourself differently, or allows you to deliver that product or service in a different way. So here are the 2 examples that I'll give you. And again, y'all might be a little too young. Y'all may have to go check out some YouTube video I'm about to talk about here. But if George Jefferson from the Jeffersons came back, y'all go check this out for y'all a little young. George Jefferson came back and decided to open up a new cleaning business. But his cleaning business, Jayla, used technology in a really foundationally different way to clean clothes better, faster, cheaper, or deliver or pick them up in some cool Uber-like way. That technology, I want to be able to say, is George a tech entrepreneur masquerading as a cleaning business, or is he a cleaning dude who's leveraging technology in a different way? I want to be able to ask that question. But that technology, I would want to invest. So I'm not investing in the cleaning business as much as I am the technology that changes the cleaning business, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Another example for you, all of a sudden we're all going out, and this technology I'm about to does exist. We're all now going out and we have to, use the QR, of us phones to pull up the menu. But that's just a PDF of that menu. What if that menu, Jayla, what if you had that menu was more dynamic? And what if it was at a restaurant that you go to frequently and they know you, and you walk in and they can, they geo know you coming in. And as soon as that menu pops, they say, Jayla, it pops up to you and it's more personalized. We know the last few times you ordered this, or they even had your drink waiting for you at your table before you even, as you sat down, your favorite drink was waiting there. Or the menu, one of the biggest costs at a restaurant is food waste. So what if towards the end of the night, Walter, they're running, they got just 2 or 3 chickens left. And it's no need in keeping them because they're going to waste. They run a special on chicken. They know you like chicken. They push that chicken to the top of the menu and run a special and say, Walter, don't you want this chicken? All of a sudden, right, I've changed your experience at that restaurant, and I've leveraged technology in a way that's changed your experience and changed their economics.
Yeah, I mean, technology is already just watching our every move. It would be, I don't know, I may be, at first when I see that, I may be a little weirded out that they know everything about my last meal.
Right.
But I'm gonna be like, oh, you got my drink ready? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You ain't gonna be mad about it.
But you know what?
I'm not.
It's not that weird. Amazon does that.
Thank you. I was gonna say
Amazon does it all the time.
Or Google does it right now. You go if you do Gmail right now, you see little ads of all the stuff you've done searches for inside your box. So what's the difference? What's the difference? I'm a Marvel. Actually, I'm going tonight to see the new Marvel Ten Rings movie with my son, and there's a line from the Winter Soldier that they say that I think is just right on. It says, "People are willing to trade their security for more. They're willing to trade their freedom and personalization for more security," and that is true. That is true. And I'll add, and convenience. We're willing to trade some invasion of our privacy, quote unquote, for convenience. We do it every day. You're right, Walter. We do it every day for Amazon. Every day for Amazon.
Go ahead, Walter. You want to go? You want me to go next?
I messed you up on that one, Jalen. I messed you up on that one.
No. You got people thinking. That's what this is for.
That's right.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about your career journey to get to where you are now. Are there any parts of that journey that were just really lows or really big highs that stand out to you that you can speak on to kind of give people a perspective? They're seeing all the good stuff you're doing, but were there any low moments that you had to pick yourself up?
No, there's a lot of low moments. The one that I do talk about, because it's relevant to this whole DEI conversation. So I had just finished Stanford, my master's degree, and I didn't say this. So I went to SMU for my undergraduate. I went to Stanford for my master's in computer science, and then a few years later, I went to Harvard for my MBA. Mm-hmm. So in between Stanford and Harvard, I worked at Southwestern Bell, actually in Oklahoma. And started out, they had one of these management training programs where they give you all this cool training and they put you in terms of people. And so my first job there was in Oklahoma City, had 12 technicians that this is pre-internet, I'm aging myself, did pre-internet, and it was an old T1, DS1, sub T1 line, and they did the inside tech. And these are all union folks. And a part of the job I had, I got kind of drafted into building out at that time, the largest E911 system in the country around all the municipalities around Oklahoma City. And let me tell you, having to deal with 50 plus fire marshals and police and ambulance folks, it wasn't the most fun thing, 26 years old, but we pulled it off, got the project done under budget, on time, and I got named some big award, one of the youngest person to get this big award. So the thanks for doing all this good stuff, they shipped my little black butt from Oklahoma City to Sallisaw, Oklahoma. Don't none of y'all Google that, because I'm gonna tell you where it's at. It's in eastern Oklahoma, near the Arkansas border. I had 12 guys scattered across 3 towns. I had a skinhead camp in the northern part of my territory. The FBI had been watching for like 10 years. At the time, Jayla was dating this young lady, half black, half white, could pass for being white. I made the fatal mistake of bringing her there. I thought they were going to shoot me. Okay, nobody would rent to me, or so I ended up staying in this hotel and driving, basically commuting to Oklahoma City. It was like 2.5 hours. And on top of all that, and I'm not going to say his real name just to protect him, there was a dude on the team, flat out racist. And I'm going to call it Mickey. And he hurt his ankle at one point, my early thing. And he had the union guy, so he could come in. So I had him in my office, and I got mad at him one day, and I said something I shouldn't have said. I said, you probably can't even read, but I'm gonna give you something to do. Here's a book on Malcolm X and one on Martin Luther King. You read this and get out of my office. time passes. I got called every N-word, MF, shot at, all kinds of stuff. But I saw some, let me tell you, separately, I saw poverty. I mean, there's just some poor white folks out there. There's poor people, but there's some really poor folks. And with the telephone company, everybody got to get a phone. So you go into inside people's house, and I won't even describe. I mean, just the level of poverty that my folks had to deal with was just, oh man. But I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I never calling my boss's boss, who I was close to, and I said, dude, I'm either going to shoot somebody, they're going to shoot me, or it's going to happen about the same time. This just ain't working. And so they moved me. I was there for like 6 months, but I ended up turning that crew. That crew was one of the worst performers in the state on different metrics that they got me to one of the best in 6 months. We turned it around. When I left, Mickey, who threw the party for me for leaving? Mickey. And he and I stayed in touch about a year or so afterwards. Because here's the deal. After all that, so many of us, and this is so true today, even more so true today than even, back then. This was 1988, 89. Because of social media, it's easier for us to stay in our little world, our little cocoon, right? And it gets all we do is reinforce our beliefs. And even more so back then, because you didn't have social media, it was easier to get reinforced. But now I actually think it's easier to get reinforced. And so he had never been interacted with a Black guy. He had never interacted with, somebody like myself. And I would say that to all of us, we have to, the world we're in right now, we are so quick to say Jayla's wrong and I'm right. We're so quick to put labels on one another. We're so quick to prejudge based off of look or a statement or whatever. And at the end of the day, because I'm a man of faith, we're all just children of God, just trying to get through, trying to do the best for our families, trying to do the best for our kids, trying to make maybe a difference in the world. And then someday, for me, when I close my eyes for the final time, I just want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. Right? That's all I want to hear. I think that's what all of us want to hear. And once we start agreeing on what we can agree on, and yes, there's going to be disagreements. So you and I are not going to like certain things. We're going to disagree. But there's a way for us to disagree that we've gotten to the point that we can't even disagree without saying you're an idiot and I am. I'm a genius. That's what we've got. We got to get beyond that. That's what that experience taught me.
Got it. And when you think about other minorities that listen to your story and they're motivated by it, and they're encouraged and about how far you've gotten, where you came from, and see you in the position that you are in now, what advice would you give them to keep going in their journey?
Yeah, I think two things, Jayla. I think one is kind of following from that is find someone outside your comfort zone to be your mentor, to be your coach, to be, go find someone that doesn't look like you or have the same, because you want to have that experience, which then also leads to be willing to take on some risk. You got to be willing to take on risk. And I think, I don't know either of your ages, but I tell folks that when I was in higher ed, when I talk to students, I said, when you're coming right out of college and, if you're not married, no kids, boy, that's the time to take on some risk, because if you mess up, you ain't got nobody. You ain't worried about 2.5 kids and a mortgage and a dog like I do. You got to worry about this stuff, I don't know where that half kid came from, but you gotta worry about these things. So do it while you can. And here's the other thing I'll tell you, Jayla. The third thing is, and I can give this counsel to a lot of students that I've been blessed to be able to counsel. Spend a minute, because so many times we go to college, to go get a job. And I get that. I get that, because I did that too. I mean, I grew up poor and I had to, go get a job. But I would tell you, passion is important. Being passionate about something is so important. So here's the guidance I give folks. Spend a day either using your phone or your piece of the old school. There's a thing called pencil and paper. For those of you that don't know, this thing called pencil and paper. But spend a week thinking about the answer to this question. I would get up in the morning, regardless of what they paid me to do X. And I don't care if X is sitting on the beach sipping margaritas. I don't care. Don't overthink it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't just pure stream of conscious every day. Just think about that question. Put the things out. It'll become 20, 30, 40 things, whatever it is. Don't care. Just put it down. Pure stream of conscious. Do not edit it. Come back after that week and look at that list. And here's what I'll guarantee you. Again, by the way, I haven't said job yet, right? I just said something you would do for X. Right. Regardless of what they pay. You will see themes. You will circle 5 or 6 of them. You'll see 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 themes. And then you want to ask yourself, which of these themes am I really passionate about? And then, Jelly, you want to ask yourself, what do I got to do for that passion to be the thing that I become? Again, I haven't said anything about the job. What do I need to do to make that passion my reality? Then you start your journey of training, coaching, relationships, jobs, whatever it is for that path. And by the way, I'll close with, you need to do that every 5 to 6, 7 years, or you have life events that happen to you, because the answer to the question will change and your passions will change.
So
that's okay.
Do you consider yourself working a job, or are you just following your passion?
I'm following my passion. I have not interviewed, I mean, I guess I technically interviewed for this job, but I didn't interview for a job for 20 years.
Wow.
That's amazing.
You get a call, because here's what one of my professors at Harvard told me. He said, Troy, what you want to be at a point in life is where you're doing something or you're known for something that when people want to say, I need somebody who knows to do or knows about X, you're one of the 3 people they think about. And as my daddy also said, who daddy didn't go to college, but pretty smart dude. He just say, there's only one thing you really control in life, because you don't control how people think about you, right? You don't really control your reputation. You really don't. Because what Jayla thinks of me, I can't control what you think of me. Only thing I truly control is my time. And how I present myself with my time is what I do control. So the real question to everybody is, how do you present yourself? And what do you do to your question about passion with your time? Because you only got so many minutes. God has only given you so many minutes and so many breaths. What you doing with them?
I think that was great. I think one of the last questions I would ask to kind of wrap things up is, what are some of the tools and resources that you're using, to stay in the know, to make sure, the books, the journals, the podcasts, what are you listening to or reading that others could kind of soak into?
Yeah, I don't, for me, just again, I spend a lot of time on my Bible. So to me, my Bible is my thing. But I do, I read a lot, so I'm on a lot of just streams of things. And so, so I'll see an article and I'll go double click on the article and then go read about it. And so to answer your question, I'm on just a bunch of, I can't even tell you how many different, information streams, email, highlights that come to me during the day. And I just consume all of that. And I just do like to consume all that. And I like to learn something new. As again, back to my daddy, he said, boy, if you don't learn at least one thing new every day, that means you're probably dead. And he's right.
Well, there goes it. All right. You want to, Sir Walter, you want to do our wrap it up?
I do. I have one more question though.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Troy's in a position where he sees a lot of ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
What is an area or a topic that you feel like you don't feel like the entrepreneurs are spending enough time on as far as developing or bringing something out?
Well, I'm gonna answer your question more. I'm gonna answer 2 ways. There's 2 areas that I just have a personal passion around, that we are seeing some stuff around, but I love to see more. So the first one is ag tech, urban tech. I think this notion of ag tech, urban tech is going to be a huge, huge space. I think we as Black folks need to be in it more. So I love the work that's happening, for instance, at Eastern Shore and even at College Park around this, but getting more Black, and the work that we did at UDC, where we actually had a couple of entrepreneurs here that actually did some urban ag types of stuff, which I think is really exciting. So that's one. I think the other one that I have a passion around that I like to see more of, and I think that needs to be fixed around is, look, I don't know about you two, but during this whole pandemic, particularly at the beginning of it, I should have bought stock in Uber Eats, because I mean my kids, I spent a whole lot of money on Uber Eats and still do. And so in order to do that though, right, I had to have digital economy. And so this whole digital currency that most of us don't think about is becoming more and more relevant than, and this is not about cryptocurrency, it's about just basic digital currency. Having digital currency is important to do the Amazon transactions or whatever. But how many of us don't have access to that digital currency, Walter? There's a ton of folk that do not have access to digital currency. And so how do they participate? And so we're leaving a huge swath of the world. This is not just a United States problem. This is a global issue that don't have access. So I think having more, and again, people are thinking about this. So I'm not saying this, but to answer your question, that's to me is where there's some excitement and some real potential. And the third one I'll leave you with to close on the DI, and I think Jayla will appreciate this. And I tell this to my white male venture capital friends. I said, there's this industry out there that's chemical based, product marketing, great channels, highly fragmented, billions of dollars being spent, very loyal customer base. You know what it's called? Black women's hair care. And there's no venture capital money in that space. Yeah, there you go.
Right. We were talking to someone else in a previous podcast, and he was investing in some black hair, different things for them. So it's definitely a way to go.
It is, because here's the challenge. It's hard, and this is not trying to be negative, but it's just the truth. You can't invest in something you've never experienced or don't understand. And so when you have a majority making a decision in a space that they don't know anything about, and Black women's hair care is not the only space that fits this thing, right? There's a bunch of other markets that they just don't have experience that fit what I just described. And so that's to your answer. That's the real answer to your question, Walter, is how do we get into these spaces, these markets that are billions of dollars, that have very loyal customer bases, that are highly fragmented, that have not been monetized in a foundational way. Black women's hair care, one of them. Look, I got a wife and a daughter, so I know.
Yeah, we change it up like every week, so
I know how much money is spent.
I like it. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming on our show and sharing a little about yourself and things you're working on and things that you're keeping an eye on.
Definitely. Great conversation, great advice for, future people that are trying to follow in the same footsteps. So we really appreciate it.
Well, appreciate you too. Y'all be well and be blessed and have a good weekend.
How can people find you if they want to get in contact with you? Your social medias or something?
So TEDCO, the website, they just Google TEDCO to come up, but it's TEDCOMD.com is the website, TEDCOMD, like Maryland, MD.com. And then my email is pretty easy. It's troy@tedco.md. So a little different, okay? But our website has a ton of, Tammy Thomas, who's our our chief marketing officer, does a tremendous job. A lot of great information up there, and a lot of great tools, as well as access to the funding elements that I mentioned earlier.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Great for you too. Y'all be well. Be safe.
Take care.
That wraps up this episode of the Disruptive Podcast by Minority Innovation Weekend. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Check us out online at www.minorityinnovationweekend.org and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.